Good evening. Hello. And first, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Tommy Hancock. I'm the guy who does this convention. And a few other things. I happen to be a owner of this wonderful company called Pro Save Productions. And I have sitting beside me, and I'm going, even though it's not going to be as much fun if I do this, you need to know that what you're about to see is all in good fun, is all in good humor, and neither one of us are cleaning up the blood that may be left, so you may have to go get hotel stuff. So my cohort.
My name is John Pyka. Some of you know me by Big Daddy Cool, Johnny Della Rocca. I am the host of the Dieselpunk podcast on iTunes, the Diesel Powered podcast. I also co-host a geek culture video web show on comicspriceguide.com called Tales from the Geek. We have about just a little audience, about 2.5 million viewers, but it's just a small show. And then I also am a professional actor, singer, magician. I'll be doing my stage magic act tonight at 7, which is a Dieselpunk act. And the character I play, my life is dedicated to Dieselpunk. I'm called what they call a lifestyler, in that I live it 24/7 just about. And so the outfit that I have on is not an outfit, it's actually my normal wardrobe. So,
And this is what he wears to work.
Yes, that's right.
Unless you're riding the bike, then you say.
Well, no, I change. I wear my bike togs on the bike. I get to work, and I have part of my wardrobe there at the office to change.
So, the discussion today actually comes out of a couple of different things, but essentially there is, let's let you start. We're here to talk about Dieselpunk, and I'm going to let my esteemed partner here tell you what he thinks Dieselpunk is.
Oh, what I think. All right.
You do have to read it off of somebody's website.
This is a statement adopted by the Dieselpunk community, which includes Nick Oddins and Mr. Pycraft, Tom Wilson, Larry Amiet, and myself as the producer of the Diesel Powered podcast. Dieselpunk is an aesthetic, it is a style, it is a genre. It blends the art and culture of the 1920s through the 50s with today. And as a movement, as a genre, we look to inspiration that was defined by the movement and revolution, jazz, modern art, world wars, streamlined technology, and an evolution from stilted Victorian-era hypocrisy. And our goal is to shape a better future for ourselves by merging the zeitgeist of the past with today's technology and attitudes. The spirit of the past with today's technology and attitudes. That's the official definition as accepted by those who are part of the Dieselpunk community. And with me, by the way, just so that everyone knows, I do have a ringer in the audience, hero support with me, John Wofford in the back, who's one of the co-hosts of the Diesel Powered podcast. And so,
it needs to be noted that I didn't feel the need to bring in a ringer to make my point, but I have like 14 of them over in the convention center.
That's all right. That's all right.
So we'll go on from there.
That's all right.
Notice how none of them even voluntarily showed up.
Oh no, they were asked not to come.
Actually,
they were asked not to come.
You should have brought them.
Don't need them.
So what does all that mean? Well, it means that Dieselpunk celebrates the art, culture, music, fashion of the 1920s through the 50s, but with modern technology, modern sensibilities, or other elements added to it. It is largely a visual medium. The reason we call it Dieselpunk is because that era, the 20s through the 50s, the fuel or the fuel was diesel. That was what powered the economy. It was common use at the time, diesel fuel. It includes things like Art Deco, noir, pulp, jazz and swing music were the big influences. Military fashion and styles have a big influence on it. Diesel era authors include at the front end Edgar Rice Burroughs, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ray Bradbury, H.P. Lovecraft, and among others.
Oh, crap.
I know Lovecraft gets claimed by the steampunkers, but
Lovecraft doesn't belong to either one of you. And
well, no, he doesn't belong. We draw inspiration from. There's a big difference.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about that because I think I have figured out what this argument's going to boil down to.
Okay.
But go ahead, finish your. I'll give you your floor.
Well, no, that's it. I mean, we look at our timeline. Steampunkers are the Victorian era, and we kind of look at the beginning of World War II as the official start of the diesel era. And most people consider 1945, the bombing of Hiroshima, as the end of the diesel era. I, however, have a personal timeline that extends into 1957 with the launch of Sputnik and the official start of what they call the atomic era or the atomic age.
Okay. I think I have figured out, but let me tell you why this has become a point of contention, of playful contention, of course, but why it's a point of contention.
Yes.
A statement has been made in the past that a particular movie
Yes.
is Dieselpunk.
That's right.
And that Indiana Jones is Dieselpunk.
That's right.
Now, so I have figured out in listening to your recitation, to your point,
Yep.
that I know what my issue is. You got the wrong damn name. And here's why. Even though you may deny it, and I know, and I don't mean the cohorts you've mentioned here, but some other Dieselpunkers have denied this. It cannot be denied by logical people that your name is derived in the same sensibility that steampunk is derived. Agreed?
That's right. Well, the actual person who coined the phrase dieselpunk, I can't remember his name. What was it? For the game Children of the Sun?
Sorry.
I forget. Anyway.
But they have similar origins in that, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I'm being very gracious.
No, that's right. That's
Being very
fine.
gracious. Because in similarity, steampunk, does anybody not know what steampunk is? Okay. Steampunk is basically spun out of the Victorian era, and it assumes that technology from that point forward is based on steam.
Yes.
Which I saw on your list that you have Jules Verne down as
inspiration for from
except he was atomic, so we'll leave that alone. There was no steam power in the Nautilus. The only steam powered.
But you're just.
But from the era, he is part of the era. So steampunk.
He's from the Victorian era,
right? And so steampunk fans claim H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, Bram Stoker, Mary Shelley, Edgar Allan Poe as theirs. I get what you're saying.
Well, and here's the difference. Here's where I'm going with it. When you look at what steampunk and dieselpunk are, basically, and again, I'm not, I'm the other side of his argument, but actually, I agree that there is a era that you could call something. You can't call it dieselpunk, and here's why. Because steampunk, dieselpunk, cyberpunk, all of those punks have one thing, or dieselpunk, by your definition, doesn't, but they should have one thing in common. They are about an era where technology stops, and the future technology or the advancements in that era are all based on X. Steam, diesel, whatever. So the punks and cyber's even one of them. No, let me just do the other side of the room. Cyber's even one of them. And cyberpunk is a futuristic punk that is, that's a whole other discussion because I don't even think it's a punk because it doesn't meet this requirement that I have. Which is, it's not about the era. This is my issue with people calling Indiana Jones steampunk. Indiana Jones is era fiction. It is pulp. It is not steampunk, but dieselpunk. It's not dieselpunk because by the general definition of the punk at the end of it, technology has stopped and has progressed using diesel. You want to know what is dieselpunk? Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
Absolutely it is.
We disagree? He disagrees. You're a ringer! I win!
No. He does not disagree that Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow is dieselpunk. He's disagreeing with your argument that technology stops.
True. Technology doesn't necessarily stop.
Well, no, it doesn't, but
but-
the development of technology continues using the diesel or the steam.
All right, so in our world, what makes it diesel? And here's for us what makes it diesel. All right, it's not just that we like old retro stuff. We do, but it's got to be contemporary in origin, which means that it was written or created after the actual era that it's influenced by. So after 1945, for the sake of argument, it has to have been created since 1945. It's got to have what we call decadence, which is the aesthetics of the 1920s through the 40s. It's got to have that look. It's got to have that style, be it noir or the swing era styles.
So it has to be created
Art
after
Deco.
your period.
Right.
But it's set in a period.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No, not necessarily.
Well, I'm going to argue that it wouldn't be set in a period at all.
Well-
because to be punk, and I agree. I may have misspoke, and I thought I'd clarified it. Technology doesn't necessarily have to stop. But if progressions in technology are made, for steampunk, for instance, there are many stories that have modern steampunk settings. And what happened? In the Victorian era, when steam was popular, technology progressed, but it progressed along the line of steam. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is it doesn't, what stops is the progression toward diesel, the atomic era, whatever, that it progresses along the lines of steam. When you take something that is period, and this is not an argument just with you, I have the same damn argument with steampunkers who I had a steampunker tell me not an hour ago, and I wish you were around because you would have argued with me, I think, that Charles Dickens was steampunk. He's not steampunk!
No, he's Victorian literature.
He's Victorian literature. Indiana Jones is a period film. It's not, you're right, it's not in the period that you're talking about.
Well, and the third element for us is what for Dieselpunk is the punk, and for us it may be different than steampunk. And for us that is any number or combination of things. Either it can have a countercultural message, which Indiana Jones does not, or it has acknowledgments of dark elements of history, such as Nazi warfare, civil rights, has an emphasis on technology. In the Indiana Jones case, it's magical technology in the Ark of the Covenant, or in the
Stones in the second one.
stones in the Cup of Christ. It doesn't have to be machinery. It has to be some kind of alternative technology. So it can be machinery, it can be mechanized, but it can be magical technology, or sci-fi elements. Robots, ray guns, magic,
Spaceship.
giants, creatures,
Aliens in the fourth
etc.
one. My God.
Yeah. But here's where I think I disagree. And understand, after hearing this, I'm not, Indiana Jones in no way in hell is Dieselpunk. And here's why. Alternative technologies, again, looking at the word punk, in steampunk, cyberpunk, the other ones that are out there, there's even one coming called hooker punk. I'll talk about it in a minute. But the other punks that are out there, that technology is utilized, not an alien technology, it is whatever, it's steam, it's diesel, and it's utilized. It's not found and locked away in a box. It's not given back to the natives in the Indian country.
Why not?
Because it doesn't further the culture. It is taken out of the culture. Steampunk and the other punks, they further the culture. You have these really strange people, strange looking looking people walking around these cons with all these metallic things hooked to their heads, and they've got these monocles that you can press a button.
That serve no purpose.
Yes, they do. In their world, they do, because they one of the monocle thing, for those who aren't big steampunk fans, there are a lot of people who wear monocles in steampunk, and a lot of them are created in fiction, of course, to add to accent your vision. There's one particular, and I can't think of the character. It's in a book that I read, but his monocle sits right here, and it'll come out here, and it'll adjust, and he can look around corners with it. And how does he power it? He presses a button, and there's this little steam thing. Goofy as shit, but it still is steam powered, and it still furthers. They didn't give it back to the Indians. or not the Indians, but the Indians. So,
Well, most, I have to tell you where this argument comes from, because you're like, why are you splitting hairs over Indiana Jones? Most people in the Dieselpunk community look at Raiders of the Lost Ark as the first true Dieselpunk film. Dieselpunk is very visual. It is a visual medium for the most part. That's why there are a lot of movies that are done in the style, comic books, a ton of them. And things like Sky Captain, he mentioned, Dick Tracy, The Rocketeer, Shadow.
I see. Well, let's talk about that. All right, because I'm going to agree with you on most of those. Rocketeer is very much Dieselpunk.
Yeah, it is.
No doubt whatsoever. I mean, raise your hand if you've seen The Rocketeer. Okay. Very much Dieselpunk. Captain America is very much Dieselpunk. You know why? How many of you saw the Captain America movie? Raise your hand. Okay. The thing they put him in, obviously there are diesel engines all around the room running the device they put him in. I agree with that completely. But I guess I get frustrated, and I do the same thing with steampunkers too. I get frustrated with taking it because it's in the era, lumping it all in and saying this is diesel.
Well, but we don't do that. And that's an important thing to know.
Except you said Indiana Jones was diesel.
Well, that's because we disagree about the punk in Indiana Jones. But the community at large accepts it as the first true Dieselpunk movie. But, you know, we love movies like The Artist, which is not a Dieselpunk movie, but it is a Diesel era story.
And I agree with that.
So we look at that as, you know, something that fits our aesthetic, and to look at and to love and to maybe model style after. This is going to blow a lot of people's minds. Great Gatsby movie coming out in May with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire. We are going to claim that as a Dieselpunk movie, not an era movie, because of the soundtrack.
And not just the soundtrack. The costumes are also updated
Yes,
slightly.
they're contemporary costuming, set in the 20s.
Okay.
I knew that would be great on it.
No. The only argument, actually, no. I agree because I've seen the trailer. The costumes are dramatic, but the cars are even updated. If you look at the front of the grills on the cars in it, they are not 1920 grills. So I agree with that part. Adapting a movie to your era because of a damn soundtrack? Are you freaking kidding me?
No, but that's part of it.
Then I'm going to start Western Punk, and Young Guns is the first movie in Western Punk.
There you go.
But
I would jump on that bandwagon.
But it's not, because the damn soundtrack might be one of my favorite soundtrack albums ever, but it doesn't affect the story.
Well,
It affects how the story is perceived by the audience.
That's right. It does change the perception of the audience. And we actually, in the Dieselpunk community, have very specific music references or models that we look at. Yeah, there's the traditional swing stuff. We love the retro stuff from the era, but, you know, new stuff that uses modern instrumentation, modern beats like Big Bad Voodoo Daddy,
Cherry Pumpkin Daddy.
yeah, but even more than
And all that.
Caravan Palace and Time Spasm Band and the Gas House Gorillas that are using riffs and rhythms and sounds from the 20s through the 40s, but mixing it with contemporary instrumentation or like in the case of what is called electro swing, club beats over top of that. And that's what the soundtrack basically for The Great Gatsby is. So it's electro swing.
Here's the and this is going to sound like an insult. I honestly don't mean it to be, but here's where the argument comes from. Because I am neither a steampunker, I'm not a dieselpunker, maybe a western punker, since I think I just invented that. But no,
It's pretty awesome.
You are a hooker punker.
Well, we're talking about hooker punk in a minute. But when I actually want to use hooker punk to illustrate my whole point in a minute. What we are doing here is, and again, not meant to be an insult, you have a very loose interpretation of diesel punk. It's very broad.
Well, and we would admit that.
It's very broad. And what I'm doing is looking as an outsider, looking at the various punks, and being a writer and publisher, the various punks in literature and in other mediums, and this may be a problem for Dieselpunk as a movement, and so I'm actually offering advice in a fight that I thought I would win. If you're too broad, you're going to leave yourself way open to way too many interpretations. One of the things about steampunk that has made it so successful is it is not broad at all. There is a box.
I will argue that.
Okay, hang on, and you can. But there is a box. Now, before you argue that, there is a box, and you have to follow certain rules in this box to be steampunk. You can go beyond the boundaries as long as those rules are observed. We're correct? You can push the boundaries.
The rules have changed over the past 10 years.
Well, they have. And in a good movement, the rules will change. I'll give you a perfect example that isn't a punk movement. On the back of my books, you see the little New Pulp logo. We started the New Pulp movement 3 years ago to promote pulp fiction. In the last year, our rules have changed too. I don't think it's a problem that the rules change, but the box were met. There is still a restriction. There is still a box. And if you leave it open as that is, because looking at your list here and what you've said, I can think of a dozen different movies that by your rules would be Dieselpunk and would make me go,
Look, that you're not saying anything that hasn't been said within the community and by other people. And conversely, at our panel at Mid-South Con, Sherry Priest went ballistic over me for trying to create any kind of a box. Steampunk author, she doesn't believe in the boxes. She hates the boxes, she resents being put in a box. She really should. Anyway, but that's another story. And you're right. It is very broad, and we admittedly acknowledge that.
So in other words, if I'd been on the panel with you and Sherry Priest, she would have hated both of us.
Yeah.
Because I would have argued the box. And
Yeah,
she's the easiest to argue the box about.
Now, and I understand where you're getting with the box, because in the community, I'm controversial because I think Star Wars is Dieselpunk. It has all of the elements of Dieselpunk. It's contemporary in origin. It has the aesthetics of the 20s through the 40s in that it's modeled after the classic serial movies from that era. And it's a countercultural attitude.
But it's only missing one thing. Diesel!
Wrong.
There is diesel. There is no diesel.
Yeah, there is.
No, there is no diesel in Star Wars.
Came directly from Lucasfilm.
No, George Lucas was questioned about the use of fuels in the early publicity of.
It is their fuel is a petroleum-based fuel.
It is no. You know what he compared it to? It is a crystal-charged fuel. He compared it to the dilithium crystals of Star Trek. That is derived from crystals. It is not.
I'm going to challenge you on that. I'm going to go look that up because I have never heard George say that, and I am a great GL sycophant. And hang on.
There are some wonderful words you just used. I'm not even going to touch that. Go ahead.
True. I am an acolyte of the great and mighty GL. And
but let me make more.
I have it direct from Lucasfilm sources that it is a petroleum-based fuel that they use in the Star Wars
It has
universe.
to be charged by crystals, or charged by a crystal system that is not actually crystals. It is a fusion engine. It is not petroleum. That's the issue. It is a fusion.
Well, and that's where the community takes issue with me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost a lone voice. I'm not a lone voice.
You're going to agree with him?
AT-ATs. Those are definitely drawn by diesel engines. No matter what the fuel is that necessarily powers them, those are diesel engines.
I've got another ally on my side.
Well, hang on. And I'm not arguing with you. I'm seriously what I'm thinking. You may be right, because that is a hydraulic system. So.
And that technology was modeled directly after the Nazi war machines.
Yeah, you're right. The war wheel and all that was in development. So that you actually may have made his point about Star Wars.
I'm actually not alone.
I don't agree with that either.
I'm not actually alone in that opinion. There are a lot of people in the Dieselpunk community that hold my opinion. It's just not the popular opinion. And it creates quite a bit of debate on online forums, which I love.
I guess I'm confused because the way your definition of of punk as being an end of the line for, not a change in technology, because cyberpunk was invented, was coined back in the 80s as a description of, William Gibson and a few other authors. And the cyber part was only because it dealt with some technology. The punk part didn't deal with stopping the technology. It dealt with the dystopian
the attitude.
Well,
and the fact that-
and let me clarify, I agree it didn't deal with, and that's why I corrected, I clarified a while ago. It's not the stopping of technology, it's just that technology develops from that point on along that linear line, along the cyber line, along the steam line, along the diesel line. The definition of punk for me is, and I used the wrong words when I said stop, the technological progress beyond that line halts. And because you talked about Gibson and all that, when you talk about that, there is, and although people, I got thrown out of a Philip K. Dick panel because I claimed that most of his stories were cyberpunk. No, I was beaten up about it.
Well, and one of the movies on my list is Blade Runner.
And Blade Runner is in no way in hell Dieselpunk.
I included it there because there are so many in the Dieselpunk community that do include it. I tend to agree with you. It does have diesel aesthetics.
It agreed. It has the
But
aesthetic.
that, for me, that's where it ends.
Yeah.
And so I have a hard time including it as a true Dieselpunk movie. But I include it on my list as an example because so many others in the community do include it. But I include movies that nobody else includes on their list. Like the Peter Jackson King Kong. Because it's contemporary in origin, it has the aesthetics, and it has the punk element of the science fiction element of the giant gorilla and the dinosaurs.
I think
and
that's where our disagreement comes in, is the punk element. Because for me, the punk element is all about technology and progress along that technological line, not about the science fiction or the magic or whatever. So I think that's probably where we disagree. Let me talk a little bit, though. It's not completed yet. It'll be done later this year, I think. And this goes back to the use of the word punk. Because it's very interesting. Because I have been invited to be a part of an anthology that is called Hooker Punk. And Hooker Punk
We
makes
talked about this on the show, didn't you? Did you hear about this?
I don't think so.
Hooker Punk makes the assumption, in the stories we write, we have to make the assumption that prostitution, yes, it is that hooker, prostitution is not only legal, but it is such a powerful occupation that it has affected the government, the finance, everything about the world.
It is the foundation of the economy.
It is the foundation of the economy.
Sounds like reality.
Well, yeah, well, except this is out in the open.
Oh, okay.
This is
Here, I was worried that you were going to start using hookers as fuel.
actually no. And I'll give you my.
We're going to trademark that idea right now.
Actually, you can't. It's already in one of the stories.
Using hookers as fuel.
Processing dead hookers and turning them into fuel.
That's different.
Yeah. But
I just pointed
let me
that
tell. Let
You can
me.
do that with pedophiles, not hookers.
Yeah. My story is called The Madam's Way, and it is, of course, for those that don't know, I'm very much a pulp writer, and it's very much a hooker pulp story because my heroine in it is the Madam, who is basically the only masked hero in the New York City of this period, and she has to get this individual. And New York City is the capital of the country at this point. Has to get this individual from one side of town to the other to the office of the Madam President. Madam President. Without getting him killed, because he's the hugest anti-prostitution advocate and all this stuff. And so throughout my story, everything is about the hooker, the economy, and all this. Everything. So punk. Let me clarify. Punk is not actually. I didn't come up with the title. Punk is not actually the right name for it either. By my definition, because we're not talking about technology. We're talking about a whole movement. But one of the coolest things about my story is she's transporting the guy across town. She swings over to this hotel. She has to lock him in a room because she's got a scheduled trick that she has to turn before she can take him on to the Madam President, because she's a hooker, and that's the economy. And so it's a great idea, but it's really not by my definition, it's not punk either.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it punk either.
I got confused. Which Madam President are you talking about?
I know. In my story, the madam is the hero.
No, well, you keep saying the Madam President. Madam President as the president's wife or as
No,
the
Madam
president?
President of the United States.
Okay.
The title is Madam President. There are no men.
Oh, I was just making sure there was
In leadership.
getting
In
it.
leadership. There are no men in leadership, but men are the source of the income.
That's really twisted.
Yeah, but it's a fun concept.
Yeah.
It's something fun to play with.
Well, and
You think about hydraulics, thrusting, and pistons, and it diesel pump too?
the word punk is thrown around a lot, by the way. It seems like everybody has a new punk, and I actually found the community looking for what I was calling, in my mind, noir punk or deco punk. And actually those terms exist under our umbrella, but they haven't taken hold like Dieselpunk has. And that's only because the game Children of the Sun, and then after that, Bioshock used the term Dieselpunk to describe himself, and that kind of just cemented the whole thing.
Are there any questions?
Question?
We didn't really fight, but are there any questions?
If we remove the chair, will you fight?
No.
No? No, I'm fighting with the damn chair. What are you saying? Are there any questions? Okay, well, thank you for joining our panel, and I'm sorry there wasn't any blood.
Well,
Thank you very much.
it's only 3:33.
Well, I know, but I'm done. I've conceded that we're both right and wrong at the same time.
Well, if you guys are kind of interested in the topic, check out the Diesel Powered Podcast. It's the podcast that John Wofford and I co-host, along with Larry Amiet, who is one of the founding fathers of the Dieselpunk movement. He won't admit it, but he really is. He created and is the editor of the Dieselpunk Encyclopedia Online, and one of the regular contributors to dieselpunks.org. That's a good place to check out, dieselpunks.org, or our podcast, Dieselpunk Podcast, or dieselpoweredpodcast.com. And so, yeah.
All right, thank you very much. You can go early now.